Okay, let's go ahead and get started. As I mentioned, my name is Adriana Schneider, and I am the Professional Services Manager with AVAIL. I'm joined by our Customer Success Manager, Todd Trevisano, who'll be here in the background, checking out questions and making sure I don't say anything that I shouldn't be. Again, we're talking about harvesting. We're going to focus on content and data harvesting through projects, but also as a whole and how AVAIL can help. I do have a few poll questions that I would like to share here if it lets me. Poll questions. Okay, they're here. They're here somewhere. There we go, polls. Okay, so the poll that we have, I'd love to have you guys answer a few questions just so we understand who's in the audience, whether or not you actually own AVAIL or maybe another content management solution. Maybe this is just something that you're starting to search for here at the beginning of your journey. Whether or not you're utilizing Revit today as your design platform. And if you are, how are you managing content that isn't stored as a single Revit family? Things like details and drafting views, system families, materials, things like that. Thank you so much for those of you that are answering here. Just leave it up for just one more minute. Wonderful. And the poll, thank you so much for answering those questions for us. So we're going to talk a little bit about why harvesting, when to harvest, what to harvest, or what you can harvest, and then we'll go through a demonstration on how to go about harvesting. Also going to talk a little bit about some pitfalls, really with content management in general, some things to know, and then best practices. So let's talk about why harvest. Really, the goal is to provide our end users with accurate and up-to-date content, something that is vetted most of the time by a BIM manager or a BIM management team. Both are absolutely acceptable. And items that are approved so that we're always creating consistent, high-quality drawings. So there's 3 different times that I see people harvesting most often. The first one, when you're getting started. Are you building your own library today? I think we're always building library. We want to take a look at our current environment. Most harvesting is going to come from RVT files. Now that can be a template file, which I know is an RTE, but many people have it as an RVT file since work sets are only set up through RVTs. RVT files that are container files, maybe they store your details and your drafting views, your system families. Some of you do that within your template as well. We want to take a look at project-related content, and we'll look a little bit further and deeper into project-related content when we talk about post-mortem meetings. And then lastly, you guys are always updating content, adding more content. So as you do that, you want to go ahead and harvest that content so that it can be distributed to your end users for them to use for future projects. So when we look at a template or your current state or container files, we're going to be harvesting component families that might be stored in there, any type of details, drafting views, even legend views, system families and sheets. Those top 4 are probably the most valuable and most important to get started with. From there, people move on to materials, schedules, view templates, and if you're using them, you can also harvest groups. Post-mortem meetings are really important. They're very valuable. They're usually carried out at the end of a project, hence post-mortem, to kind of determine what went well, what did not go well, what was created, what was updated, what can we reuse. The projects are really, the meetings are really there to optimize your processes, mitigate risks in future projects, and promote best practices. What did we learn? How can we distribute that to the rest of the project teams? The end of a project is a really great time, and most of the time we want to celebrate, but it's really time to take a step back and take a good look, analyze that project, determine how can we make future projects more successful, more effective, more profitable. So from a Revit perspective, these are the things we really want to look at. We always want to start with the template. You may have seen some of my other webinars that I've done. I've done one on lean templates. Lean or bloated, it's still a conversation. I've also done one on building an efficient library. And the template's really important there. So when you're starting that template, when you're using it, how are you using it? How is it being implemented? What's in there? What isn't in there? What do you wish was in there? What shouldn't be in there? Is it really accurate? Does it really have all of the correct graphical representations that you need to have it? That's going to also depend on your file size throughout the longevity of your project, right? So if you have a large template file at the beginning, it's going to be large throughout the entire project. Now, it'd be great if people did quality assurance, purged content, took things out, cleaned things up. Do you have time for that? And that really ultimately affects your productivity and your users and whether or not they're very quick and efficient or potentially lagging. Which brings us to our technical processes. Again, how did we start our project? How did we bring content into our project? How did we use our template at the beginning? What was the efficiency or non-so throughout the project lifecycle? And then how did our project conclude? The second part of this is the content, because the content, it's really the building blocks of the model, of your deliverable, creating those drawings. So how are people searching for content? How easy is that? Are they finding it? Are they recreating it? And where are they storing it? Are they pulling from other projects? Very typical, very understandable. They feel confident that what they used in their last project, they can use on the next one. But what if somebody like an engineer or an architect updated a detail? Maybe the BIM management team updated a family and they're pulling it from other projects. We're going to talk a little bit about how to harvest from these projects. And then lastly, any type of content that's been modified or updated. In your project, during that post-mortem meeting, let's review all of that. Let's pull it out, take a look at it, and decide what we want to do with it moving forward. So going back to the current state of when to harvest, again, this is what we're going to talk about harvesting. Component families from projects, details, legends, system families and sheets, materials, schedules, view templates, and groups. So let's take a look at how we harvest. So we'll start with a Revit project. Now, just to understand, AVAIL harvests from files that it sees. To see files in AVAIL, you need to index it. Basically, that's simply a drag and drop. For those of you that don't know anything about AVAIL, which is absolutely fine, this is what it can look like. I actually created this account on my own because I wanted to know what it would take for someone to start a new AVAIL account, what it entails for people to get it started. And I had to tell you, it took me more time to decide what my channels are going to look like. That's what these little cards are, than it actually did for me setting things up. I also have a Revit containers file channel. This has the different RVT files that I can harvest and pull content from. Shows me the version, what kind of library this is from. Is it a project? Is it samples? Is it a container library? And then the different names. Once that's indexed, you have two options for the most part. You can either start by bringing it into a Scratch file or Scratch channel, excuse me. The Scratch channel is a channel that you index content into, and you only index a small amount. So right now, I'm working specifically on casework in my particular Scratch channel. Gives me 4 reporter results, and I now have the ability to make modifications to the different tags or the data within my content. When I do this, I also can define the shared parameters that I want to pull out and make as tags. Tags can be properties, the name of the folder, or any other data and information that you want to add by simply right-clicking, add remove tags, and adding something in here. Maybe this particular or remove it. Maybe this cabinet really isn't made for K through 12. We got rid of that, and it no longer has that tag associated to it. Maybe this base cabinet needs to be part of universities. And we added that tag. I can also use the control key to select a multitude of objects. Anyways, so that's once it's in there. So we can do it by a Scratch channel, or we can just push it into the channel that I wanted it to. And that's what we're going to do in this presentation. I'm going to add it to my architectural modeling content, the casework, doors, curtain panels. There's more that I can add, but there's a reason this is my demo file, right? So I'll go ahead and add it in here. The biggest difference between the two, is when you have everything in one channel, you have all of that content in one channel. Now you can bring in as much as 25,000 pieces of content, not a problem. But do you really want to? When you're making modifications to that content, do you want to work with that large of an amount, or do you want to work with a smaller amount of content? The other piece of it is that everyone can see this channel, because this is the channel I've distributed to my team. My Scratch channel is mine and mine alone. And until I make all of the modifications to that content, no one's going to see it. So that's the biggest difference between the two. So back in Revit, I have my file. I have a channel that I know that I want to put all that content into. And so I can just go ahead and select to harvest my content. So you can see all of the container files that I have. I'm going to use my appellation project that I have. We're doing a post-mortem. We're taking a look at content that we have to see what needs to be done with it. Does it maybe need to be added? Not added. Right now, I know that I don't have walls in my modeling channel, and I know that I need it. This is a really great example of a project that has all of the correct number of walls and wall types. So I'm going to go ahead and grab all of the walls from here and push those into my architectural channel. And of course, because I am sitting right in front of you, this is taking a minute. Hopefully won't not take too long. Now, when you harvest, what AVAIL does is it creates very minute and small RVT files. And what that does is what that allows is for us to be able to see all of this content as individual thumbnails. So again, whether it is drafting views, which you can also harvest, and I can take a look at my details here. Sheets of details. Here I have my schedules as well. Here's a frame elevation. I can go ahead and take a preview of that. I'm going to move my face out of the way. So you can actually see what these details look like, each individual one, or maybe on a particular sheet as well. So harvesting creates these thumbnails, creates individual RVT files. The other reason it does that is because we have the ability to simply drag and drop these views into our new project. Again, we can batch do that and select entire numbers of these and pull them in. Again, being those RVT files, they very easily get drag and dropped into the project. And you can see them individually very clearly. So I have my distribution location of where I'm pulling that from. Browse. Make sure that's what I want. So here I'm putting this on my C drive. Yep, I'm going to deselect things. Now you can see if I pull this down, I can see each individual item. Right now here in my drafting views, I can select or deselect all of them, and then I can individually select them. So if you're updating individual drafting views or groups, legends or schedules, you have the ability to select those individual views to pull and harvest. I'm going to grab my system families. I'm going to open them up, and I'm bringing in my walls. Just simply select walls, but I can also expand that. Make sure these are the walls that I want. Maybe I don't want a reveal in here or a wall sweep. I just simply want the walls themselves, and hit start. No, I'm going to cancel because I messed that up. All right, so I'm going to select my destination channel, and that's going to be my architectural modeling.
You may need to close out and relaunch Harvest just to get it back into, yep.
Do this 700 times and 701. You do it incorrect. All right, let's do that one more time. So we're selecting our application file list. I'm going to select the project or the channel I'm moving this to or harvesting this to, which is my modeling one, distribution location, deselect everything. I'm going to grab my system families, select my walls, expand because I want to get rid of the reveal and the wall sweep, and hit start. This is going to go ahead now and run and harvest all of that content. It's not going to take too long, but let's go back into the presentation. So we'll look at that in a little bit. Some of the things that I wanted to talk about in addition to that, though, is some pitfalls, specifically folder organization and why it's important. Currently, we're talking about Revit, and in reality, this is very important for Revit. But your folder organization from the back end, the back door, is really all about your file management. It can be, anything can be indexed into AVAIL. PDFs, AutoCAD, Revit, Dynamo scripts, and they can be indexed from anywhere, whether it's the Autodesk Construction Cloud, your R drive, SharePoint. Doesn't really matter. As long as people have access to it, you have the ability to index it. People always ask, well, what's the best practice of how many companies do it? And I can tell you that there's no two companies exactly the same. Some will use our cloud-based solution. Some will do a combination of ours plus maybe their server. Some will utilize SharePoint. More often than not, it is a combination of more than one way, but they always start with the fundamentals. The other piece of this is, look at this folder structure. Probably looks pretty familiar. A lot of folder structures look this way. Don't even get me started on what somebody's personal document folder might look like. But the problem is that when you have a poor folder structure, again, well, I saw this, I practiced this. Let's say you're in somebody's kitchen and she asks you to grab a platter from one of her base cabinets. unless you have any idea where that is, they're going to have to walk you through it. Folder structures are exactly the same way. So files can be hard to find. Maybe you don't find them at all. And that leads to confusion of reusability. Is it the most current version? And when I say that, yes, version of 2021, 22, 23 does apply, but also is it the most current version of that piece of content? Maybe somebody pulled it from a project and somebody updated it in the next project. I wouldn't know. It increases the sizes of your folders, but ultimately a big challenge we're seeing is long file names. And that really often results in poor performance, not only of users, but of technology. We've seen different tools not work properly because we have families that are stored 7 layers deep in a folder structure. It can't be found, or it does weird things. So again, resulting in that poor performance. Also inaccuracies. If someone can't find a file and has to create a new one, A, is it right? Has it been vetted? B, can anyone else use it? And how many times is that person going to use it because it's sitting on their C drive and they know where it is? Ultimately, that brings on errors, that brings on rework. And we want to minimize all of that. We want people to have the most up-to-date content that they can work on within their projects, because what's the bottom line? I want to be able to find my content to work on my project as quickly and easily as possible. That's why so many people like loaded templates, because they have everything that they need at their fingertips. But what if you could have everything at your fingertips, just in another way? I'm going to look for some casework. And yes, I can look for this through Revit as well. There is a connection, but we're not there right now. It'll be another webinar for another time. You'll see that because we are both content and location agnostic, you're looking at content that is not just Revit. It could be a URL where you're pulling content from because that manufacturer has been approved. We have schedules in here. We have tags. We have Revit families, but we have a plethora of other things as well. I know that I need to actually find a casework family to use in my project. So I'm going to go ahead and open that. This is my Revit families channel. I know that I'm in my Revit families, so we're going to go and select my casework. This is all based on my Revit categories. Scroll up here. And these are the different tabs. I know that I'm looking for a base cabinet. I'll deselect that really quick because I just want to show. So we went from thousands of families down to 200 some odd families. And now being in this particular channel under casework, we're at 93 results. I know I'm looking for a base cabinet, so I'm going to go ahead and click on that. That updates that to 44 results. But really, I'm looking for a 4-drawer base cabinet. So I'm just going to type it in like I would Google, and I'm down to 4. Took, what, 3 clicks to be able to find all of that? And I never looked through a folder. I never had to double click into a folder. Folders didn't really matter. And in reality, it doesn't really matter where this is from, because I know that my BIM team has vetted all of this content and allowed me to find it. I can now drag and drop this into my project. It is almost done here, so I apologize. It's taking a little longer than normal. The other part of this that we want to talk about, after we harvest all of this content, is we want to make sure it's clean. Again, you can put content anywhere. You want to pull that content out to be able to review it and update it. But there's tools out there that help you clean it. So as you build your library, you might want to use tools like Guardian or Ideate software to take a look at things like details, making sure all the text styles are correct. All of the detail components that you're using are the proper ones. We have sheets of details that we might have inaccuracies for. You want to be able to make sure that those details are all updated so that when we're producing our drawings, we're producing accurate drawings. In turn, this applies to all of it. Drafting type styles as well. Dimensions, line styles, and ultimately your Revit families. You're so almost done, it's driving me bananas. When I've harvested my content, you can also do this in ways where you have a channel where you have all of your harvested content. This has my drafting views and my sheets and my families, my schedules, my materials, and all of them look exactly the same as an individual thumbnail. Air surfaces, registered grills. And again, I have 148 results, but I know that I need cement. That brings me down to 2. And again, just able to drag and drop this into my project. When we're looking at content, there's a couple of things that we want to do when we're reviewing it. Oh, and look at that. It finished. All right, so here we are in Revit, and we've completed our harvest. So going into AVAIL and going into my modeling content, I now have those walls. I've organized all of this content by Revit category. And in here, I can see for an architectural modeling, I have 31 results. There were actually 33 wall types. And I can go ahead and drag and drop this into a project, knowing it's updated. I know that it's coming from my Appalachian project. It's a system family. It's a wall. I can also see where exactly its location is in case for some reason I need to get to it. Now, if I wanted to make some kind of note, because I'm reviewing all of this content, I could be reviewing it here, right? So we have this 8-inch metal panel, wide with no reveal, 8-inch metal panel, 40 inches wide. Maybe I need to make a change here. So I can flag this content and add a comment. State reveal is attached. Add a flag. And you'll notice now we have that content. And I can actually see content that needs attention. Here, we see it simply within that, or I can type it in and pull up all of the content that needs attention. All of the content, we can see the different comments within each one of those. So after post-mortem meetings, being able to review all of that content, make modifications, and update the content so that people can actually see what's being done. So in conclusion, harvesting content can be very valuable for your users. It allows them to be able to see content as individual items versus how they normally now have to pull them from container files. So the best way to handle it is to check on your content through your template, container files, and projects. Put all of them in one place, whether it be families, groups, legends, details, sheets, schedules, materials, or view templates, and review it. Add some flags, make some notes, and make modifications to update and distribute to your teams. Clean up your content and continue to build your library by looking at the graphical representation of that content, the data and information that's in there, what's needed, and how things can more easily be served. Take a look at your folder structure. These are things that we're having conversations with people all the time. Minimize the amount of layers within that folder structure. It's easier to do When you have a tool like AVAIL in which you can search through and not really need to determine different folder locations. You want to clean up the complexity of your content potentially. How many objects in there are nested? There's so much that can be said about those things. Maybe there's duplicates, different versions. We want to make sure that we're providing our users with accurate and up-to-date content. And harvesting content at the beginning, at the conclusion of projects, and simply throughout the life cycle of project development can definitely help with that. As a result, we have faster project completion, more accurate and high quality deliverables, and a reduction of errors and rework. But from a business perspective, this is going to help optimize your operational efficiency and reduce your risk. I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Does anyone have any questions?
We had a question on just the recording, and to answer that one live as well, the recording will be available on our website, as well as we typically send a follow-up email with a link to the recording. So thank you for that question. Please feel free to drop any additional in the Q&A.
Doesn't look like there are any more. We have another webinar coming up where our founder and CEO, Randall, is going to be presenting in a way that we can relate, navigating an interconnected world of information. And Todd also next week is going to be presenting. All webinars are located, or all of them to register are located on our website under resources, webinars. You can go ahead and register for those. Todd's is going to be a little bit more picks and clicks based and better understanding of AVAIL itself. Also, we will send out this presentation. And if you'd like to speak with me or anyone on our team, we can definitely have a conversation on your Revit implementation, how you're using AVAIL, whether you're using it right now or not. We're really happy to help expand on that utilization. Looks like there's some more.
Yeah, we had a couple questions come in. The first one is, with harvesting content, will it find different versions and automatically identify it by, let's say, the family name? So what harvesting will do is it will automatically tag with the Revit version. So, if you harvested content from a Revit 2024 file, then all of that content will get tagged with that Revit version, Revit 2024, and subsequently with any other versions that you harvest from, it'll automatically get tagged that way. And something that Randall, I think, will be talking about tomorrow in his webinar is the work that we're undertaking. Yep, so there you go, Revit version there, and it'll tag. Now everything will tag consistently with Revit 2023. So just in that channel, there was a previous version where it was just, if harvesting, it would just do the number, and manually indexing would do with Revit 2023. That is consistent now with the latest version. So just FYI. But Randall's also, I believe, going to be talking some tomorrow. Not exactly sure everything he's covering, but about the work that we're doing towards, essentially being able to provide, like, let's say you have a family that you want to provide in multiple versions, being able to present that as a single instance, basically like some Revit version management and some of the work we're doing there. So stay tuned for more as we talk about that. So thank you for that question. And then another was, just around the Scratch channel. That is a really helpful workflow. It's just putting things into kind of an isolated channel where it's way easier to manage outside of your full content library. So definitely recommend utilizing that. And then using that copy or move feature, especially around harvested content. Actually, I was like helping out somebody with a support ticket today that had manually indexed or streamed in harvested content, and then it doesn't behave like harvested content anymore. It'll get treated just like as if you indexed an RVT. So our recommended workflow there is, you can harvest into kind of a catch channel, a scratch channel, make sure everything looks good, tag it the way you want, and then copy or use the copy or move feature within AVAIL to move that to your public facing channel. So.
Tracy's asking a question, Todd, that sheets used to number themselves if a duplicate number was already used. How can I make it do that now?
Let's see here. Sheets used to number themselves if a duplicate number was already used. How can I make it do that now? There should be an option. I have to think about it a little bit, that it will, yeah. So essentially when you're, I guess when you're, are you saying when if you're bringing in a harvested sheet into a project and that sheet number is already in use? Is that the situation that you're talking about?
It used to assign the next number in line.
Yeah, from an AVAIL point of view, like let's say you've harvested a sheet and you're bringing that into a new project, our add-in will do some checks to see if that sheet name or number already exists. And, if it does, then I believe it should ask what you want to do.
Yeah.
And so it should use,
I think that this might be something maybe we can get on a call on and we can walk through it. Might be easiest to do that, Tracy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'd be happy to do that. So again, go back to.
Yeah, you can just shoot us an email and we'll set up a call. Absolutely.
Yep. All right, wonderful. Does anyone else have anything? Yeah, doesn't look like it. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to continuing our webinars. In our results, at the end of this webinar, before you leave, we do ask if there are specific topics you'd like to hear more about. So we really love hearing from you guys and better understanding exactly, what topics are valuable and important to you. Like I said, I've done them in the past on lean templates. I've also done one, I did one on building an efficient library. And those moving forward, this one as well, is all based on recommendations or requests from our clients. So if there are specific things you'd like to learn more about, we'd be happy to share that with you. Again, thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of your day.